it's just exciting. What I love most about my role with Premier is just the relationships and helping you all find success. And success is not necessarily the leadership title. Success is not necessarily the stage of recognition. Those are all results of success, but they don't define success. Success is when your needs are met. And that's why the little introduction, I appreciate that, Jonathan, because in marketing, our goal is not just to get bigger numbers. Our goal is not just to get more sales. Our goal is not all that traditional marketing, because we were taught by Andy Horner himself. Our goal is to make sure that every one of you, as you define your needs, have those needs met for your family. And that is success. That's when we rejoice, is that people are finding what they need through Premier. And I want to talk tonight. I was kind of glad this is kind of the grand finale of your leadership development and training and time together. And I wanted to share, kind of piggyback off something that I talked in that little video a little bit about, because it's kind of a personal theme that I'm carrying this year with all of our jewelers, and that is consistency that leads to growth rather than the alternative, which is quitting. I've just had the sad reality of witnessing so many jewelers and even some leaders who, because their business isn't where they want it to be, or because their business isn't where they wish it would be, or for whatever circumstance in their life, they've decided to quit. And that breaks my heart, because right in their lap, God has already placed an opportunity for them. And there's so many other people that benefit from them being a part of Premier, but for them to choose to quit and focus on something else or just to walk away, it's heartbreaking. And I know that's we live in a day when quitting is it's a viable option for people, and it's a viable option for people in life. It's a viable option for people in Premier, and so it seems more and more people choose that route. And that breaks my heart, because people are walking away from what I believe God has for them. And so I've been talking a lot about not quitting, and then one of the answers of being consistent. But I want to use an illustration. I love illustrations. And I want to use an illustration of something that grows consistently over time and ultimately results in something magnificent. And that's a tree. Think of your favorite tree. We don't have a lot of real trees in the Dallas, Texas area. We've got those shrub oaks, but we don't really have trees like you do there in Georgia, up in the Northeast. And but think of a real tree, a big old pine tree or a big old oak tree or an elm tree, whatever it may be. And when we see it in all of its magnificence, its branches and the shade and all that it does and what it weathers and the storms that it weathers, that tree is a magnificent plant that over time, over a lot of time, develops into something magnificent. But a tree's process of growth happens consistently over time. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not a flower. It's not the grass. It is a tree that takes time and consistency to ultimately become what it needs to be. And it's amazing. I was reading about trees, and actually International Paper Company, that I think is out of Georgia, actually talked about the life of a tree, and when you ultimately harvest a tree, you see all those rings. And it was talking about what those rings represent. Those rings represent the seasons of that tree. You can go back and count one light and dark ring together. In a sense, it's two lines, but that's one ring that represents 1 year, one season of a tree's life. And you count all those rings, you can count how old that tree is. But then when you look at those rings, you can actually see the history of that tree. And here's what's amazing. You look at a magnificent tree that has consistently grown through the years, it is not all rosy. One of the things that you'll see in every tree are periods of drought. When those rings are narrow, it didn't get water, didn't get the nourishment it needed, and so that tree grew at a very slow pace. But what's amazing is in Premier Designs, and for all of you as leaders in Premier, and even if you were a brand new jeweler, you're in this Premier Designs business, you've got to understand a reality. In order to have consistent growth through the years, you will have seasons of drought. You've got to expect it, and you've got to plan for it. Don't hit a season of drought and say, I'm not growing, and so I'm going to quit. A season of drought is not intended to hinder. A season of drought is simply a time for a person to say, I need to focus on, to determine on what they need to focus. If you've not come to a season of drought, then start considering when that might be. It could be this year. It might be next year. It could be in a couple of years. I know for your leadership, Wanda, I know there's been seasons of drought. When you look at the past of the years you've been in Premier, there were times where things didn't just not grow and would go backwards. And we've got to first accept that fact in your business. And I think a key for all of you in longevity and ultimate growth is to understand there'll be times when you're in drought. Now, some of you are in that right now. You're in a season right now that it doesn't matter how hard you try, you can't keep those shows on the calendar. It doesn't matter how hard you try, you can't sponsor for the life of you. And you're doing everything you've been taught. You're doing everything, and you're going twice at the pace, and you're getting no result. Well, it may simply be it's a time of drought. Now, what do you do during a time of drought? Well, you don't quit. See, again, that's the easy alternative. You don't say this business doesn't work. You don't walk away. But during a season of drought, that's when you start to focus on what your real intent and purpose is. That's when you have to remind yourself, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this for a need. I'm doing this for some greater cause. This is where you have to weather the drought by remembering what it's all about and knowing that that drought is going to produce you stronger. See, one thing about that narrower ring, that's actually a stronger point in that tree ultimately. When you look at fast-growing trees like a pine, like a white pine, they have very wide rings. When you look at a very slow-growing tree, they have very narrow rings. Well, a drought produces a narrow ring. So ultimately what you have in a tree, yes, there was a season of drought. It didn't grow much, but it's stronger because of that period in the life of the tree. And I want to tell you that the advantage of the droughts in your Premier business is you will be stronger. You'll be a stronger person. You'll have a stronger business because you work. Now, the answer of your daily activity is don't change anything. Don't change a thing. Just like the metamorphosis of that tree does not change during a drought. What you have to know is I may not be growing, I may not be getting the results, but I'm going to be on the phone just as much. I'm going to be talking to just as many people. I'm going to have my calendar scheduled. I'm going to be at rally just like I intended to be. I'm going to do everything that I've always done. Consistently do the things that you know work, because eventually what's going to happen, you're going to move out of that season of drought. Well, then there are the seasons of growth. And I think sometimes we think, oh, I've been going through a season of growth, or we know about jewelers. We hear about, Lacey Bassford down your way in the country. That, she gets to the Premier and she just grows, and it's like she just thinks about Premier and she sponsors. And we see people that are going through these great periods of growth, and that's wonderful. And you'll have those great periods of growth. But just understand that when those times come, if you're not experiencing them now, you will. That's a part of the cycle of growth, even in Premier. There's seasons of drought, but there will be seasons of growth. And again, I'll use Wanda because of her years of experience in Premier. For every season of drought there's been, because she consistently did what she needed to do, even during the drought, she's stronger for it. Then when she came to those seasons of growth, well, then, hey, things just happen. Some of you are in a season of growth right now. And here's what I want to encourage you to do. Work twice as hard. Now, that seems opposite of what you would think you should do, because in a season of growth, it just happens. My calendar's full, and people are just calling me up and saying, I want to be a jeweler, and nobody has credit issues, and everybody has the great training show, and everything's wonderful, and you're growing, and you're promoting, and your people are growing, and you think, this is a time for me to slow down, to enjoy the growth. That is the exact opposite of what you need to do. Now, in a drought, you need to consistently do the things that you're told to do, because the season will change. In a season of growth, you need to work twice as hard. You need to take full advantage of the season that you find yourself. And I see one of the biggest mistakes that leaders make in Premier is when things are going well, hostesses are responding, your retail's up, Sponsoring seems to be kind of you got a pace going. They tend to slow down and enjoy the fruit. And the exact opposite is what you have to do: work twice as hard, because you don't know how long that season of growth is going to last. So you work through that season of growth, work twice as hard. You reap the benefits of that, and you continue to grow. Understanding then you're going to come to yet other seasons. Now, there's another interesting thing about the rings of a tree. Sometimes if you follow one particular ring around that tree, you'll find it's thicker on one side than it is on the other side. So maybe at 3 o'clock on the ring, it's very narrow. You come around to the 9 o'clock, opposite side of the tree, and it's very wide. That is indicative of outward stress on the tree. So think of a tree on the side of a mountain, and there's a lot of wind that comes up that mountain. Because that wind is continually pushing against the side of that tree will develop residual wood. It'll add to the thickness on the opposite side to counter that outside stress. Well, what's kind of interesting in Premier for your leaders? There are times that there are outside stresses that are attacking your business. This could be your job. This could be your other job. It could be family stress. It could be health. This could be feeling out of balance. It could be times of, maybe you're going through a time of depression or discouragement. Maybe things happen in life where there are other priorities that are, just demanding your time and attention. These are things in life. Life can't control them. They happen, but they stress. What do the immature do? They quit. Well, I've got this pressure in my life right now. My health hasn't been what it should be, or my husband's work hours have changed, and it's not. I don't have. He's not available to watch the kids at night anymore for me to do shows, or my kids are now in sports, and I've got to give my time to that. These outside pressures that affect your life and business, and you know what people tend to do? They tend to quit. But the opposite is the case. Don't quit. Well, what do? Well, what you do is what the tree does. You adjust. There are seasons in your life that because of your circumstances, you've got to adjust. If your health is such that you cannot do what you were doing last year, that's okay. Adjust your business for the season because of the stress, but don't quit. If your husband, hours change, and he's not available to watch the kids, so you can't do as many shows than you did last year, okay, adjust your business, but don't quit. And that's why we've just got to understand that it's not a question of whether you work Premier. It's how you work Premier. And you've got to accept the fact that when you adjust to life, that's okay, because you're looking for long-term, consistent growth. You're looking for the future, not for what's going to happen this year. And so I just want to say for some of you, I want to give you the freedom to adjust your business, but that in no way is quitting. That's no way stopping. It's just meaning that some of your time and energy has to be given to something else. And that may be the season you're in, but don't quit. There's something else interesting about the tree. There are other times when you'll look at the rings and they'll see that there's inconsistency in the ring and they're very narrow. And it wasn't the result of a drought, but it's because of other trees. There are times that a tree is in the midst of a forest. There's a lot of bigger trees. They're getting the sunlight. Their root systems are more developed. And that tree's in the midst of a forest, and because of all these other mature trees, they suffer. You know what? Just like in Premier, when we compare ourselves to other jewelers, other leaders, the same thing will happen. There are times that, and I know your ladies, that you compare yourself to other people. You compare yourself to your upline. You compare yourself to those that you see on stage. You compare yourself to our executive directors. You compare yourself to senior leaders. You compare yourself sometimes to your downline. You sponsored a jeweler who's just, man, she's being recognized for everything, and now she's a builder, now she's a designer, and now she passes you, and you're continually comparing yourself. When you compare yourself to other people, your business will hurt. And I want to tell you what, one of the reasons people quit is because they don't feel they measure up. And so they think an alternative is just to walk away. I'm not like her, so I'm not going to do what she does, so I'm going to quit. And I want to tell you, that's the wrong response. Well, the first thing to do when you're surrounded by people who are high performers is don't compare yourself to them, celebrate with them, learn from them. Take full advantage of the fact that God's put in your business a superstar. And if that superstar is in your downline, doesn't matter. take full advantage. God, thank you for putting her in my downline. I'm going to learn from her. I'm going to let her challenge me. I'm going to run with her. I'm going to keep up with her and let her challenge you rather than quitting because of the comparison. If it's an upline, don't compare, but follow. Learn what you can learn from that superstar. And also understand every person that we compare ourselves with today, they're at a different season. They're at a season of growth when we're going through a drought. They don't have the same circumstances in their life that you have in your life right now. And so that's the enemy who's trying to get us to think that the answer is to quit when we compare ourselves to others. So again, the challenge for you in consistent growth is don't ever compare yourself to others and let it discourage. When you see others around you succeeding, learn from them and let it affect your business and follow them. But then there's an interesting thing about the tree as well. There's also the times where there's been a fire. You can actually see in the tree's rings scarring that is left from a forest fire. It's interesting, forest fires don't kill trees, but they will leave a scar on that tree. And you can see it in its history to know that there was a time there was a fire. Fires are a little different than life circumstance. Fires are the things that happen that really can destroy your business. I just got a text. I got it 3 minutes before our phone call. A jeweler that I met up in Chicago, a gal that was excited, was helping with the leadership. Her husband passed away today. Just wow, that's a fire. Here's this jeweler just excited in premier, and then for her husband to pass away, that's devastating. I've had loss in my life, and I know that that's devastating, and it can destroy. It may be your physical health when someone discovers they have cancer, when someone is battling something that's just totally out of their control, and it wreaks havoc on your life. That will happen. And I want to tell you that every strong jeweler over time, somewhere along the pathway, there's going to be a fire. Now, we don't wish for it. We don't hope for it. We don't pray for it. But that's the reality of life. The reality of the life in which we live is there's fires. And some of you are going through a fire right now, or you have. And it's tough. And again, the answer is not quitting. The answer is to heal. Just like the tree, it scars over that time period in its life. It doesn't kill the tree. It just scars the tree. There's going to be a scar. You're never going to be the same. Your life won't be the same. In fact, your business may not be the same. But still allow Premier to meet the needs in your life. Take the time you need, but then allow the people in Premier to be there. I can look back at my own life. I know probably the worst time in our life when we had a loss and our daughter passed away, it was Premier people who were there to help us heal. And I know for you, God's put you in a premier business. When you hit the fires, there are people in your life that are going to help you work through that and heal. Mm-hmm. But we got to understand it's a part of this business. And then to know that there are going to be other jewelers that they'll have fires. And we've got to be there to help them heal. We've got to get involved in their life totally outside of the whole concept of the business and just minister to them, like the testimony we heard yesterday about Carolyn who lost her husband, but it was Premier that God used to make a difference in her life. So that's part of the reality, and consistent growth means we're going to hit those fires, or people running alongside us are going to. But don't quit, even in the midst of a fire. And then there's something else interesting about what affects a tree, and that is insects. Like you can actually look at the rings of a tree, and you can see that there were periods where insects infested that tree, and whether worms that would bore into the tree, the bark, or whether the leaves would be eaten of the tree, it would affect the health of that tree in that particular season. I thought it kind of interesting that even in Premier Designs, there are times then we have these infestations, and I call them people. Now, I'm not saying that every person in your life is an insect, so I don't want you to start, thinking of your upline as an insect. But these are the people that really their motive is just to kind of eat away at us. Or maybe insects in the lives of our downline. There's somebody in their life that's just gnawing away at them, telling them they're not good enough, telling them that they can't succeed at this, telling them that Premier's not going to meet their needs. And so our sponsoring is affected because there just seems to be these people that just seem to be discouraging our jewelers or prospects. You're going to have that in your life at times. There are going to be people, maybe a hostess, and maybe your upline even, and maybe someone in your downline. It could be your spouse that just their negativity at that season in your life is just, it's devastating, and it wreaks havoc, and it's hurtful. Well, what do? Well, you don't quit. This goes back to the same idea that a tree over time, there are periods that they have these insect infestations, but the tree doesn't quit. Now, neither does the tree have the luxury of getting out a can of Raid and just spraying and killing all those insects. Well, so in Premier, we don't have the option of getting rid of all those people. It's our family, it's our neighbor, it's our downline, it's our upline. They're people that are hurting, they're hurtful, but they're a part of our life. The answer is not to get away from them. Well, what's the answer? Well, first thing is, this is where the power of prayer comes in. We need to start praying for the people specifically who are a discouragement in our life and business. I think we need to start praying for some of our hostesses right now who are facing the criticism and discouragement. We got to start praying for our new jewelers and specifically for the people in their life. And we need to start praying for some of the husbands of our jewelers who are being a discouragement, or their parents who are saying, "Oh, you can't sell anything, you can't do that." And what we need to do is pray. We need to get God to change the hearts of those people so that their attitudes change towards us and the people in our life. The answer is to stop listening and prove them wrong by our actions. This goes back to the jeweler whose husband said, "Okay, you can sign up in Premier, but you're not going to make any money. And in a year you won't be doing this." Okay, no encouragement. But the jeweler that says, well, rather than quitting because of those discouraging words or not even starting, I'm going to prove them wrong positively. So when you buy that husband his first set of golf clubs and say, this is from Premier, you're going to change his mind. When he sees the fruit, or when a parent sees the fruit, or sometimes when you look at it and say, okay, well, I got to Premier to get out of debt and I'm further in debt, then you need to go back to your business and say, I need to make certain that I address those issues that have become contentions and points of criticism by others. So again, focus and work hard on those areas of need to silence the criticism, to overcome the criticism. Don't quit. And pray for those who are a source of discouragement. In all of this, I know for a conference call we don't have tons of time to elaborate and to deal with it more. But really, the bottom line illustration of this tree is this. You're in Premier. You've been planted. You're at all different stages in your growth in business. Some of you are new. Some of you have been well established. The focus is to long-term consistency, which means if you're in your first year or your second year or even your third year as a jeweler, you have not even been in Premier long enough to consider whether or not you should quit. There's no option. You have to stay in Premier. And what I know is the people that go beyond 3 years and have been consistent, and they've gone through a drought, they've gone through a season of growth, and they've battled the outside circumstances, they've had maybe a fire in their life, they've dealt with discouragement in their life, they're stronger and they don't want to quit. 3 years is kind of a magical number I see with jewelers that for longevity. So focus on that. Okay, I'm going to be in this business for at least those 3 years and continue to work, because during that time, then I'm going to have seasons of growth. What do you do during a season of growth? Work twice as hard. You're going to have seasons of drought. What do you do during a season of drought? Consistently do the things you've been told to do that worked in a season of growth. Can keep doing them during the drought, because you'll work the way out stronger in the end. What do you do when there's outside circumstances that are putting pressure on your life and business? What do? You adjust your business. You don't quit. You adjust to those circumstances so that you can still be consistent and moving ahead. What do you do when there's a fire? Something devastating? Well, you may take a little time off, but you focus on healing. You don't say, I'm done. You say, I'm going to heal. I'm going to be back to where I need to be in time. And again, you'll be stronger and in a position to help others when they go through fires as a result. And then what do you do when there's those infestations that just kind of gnaw away at your life and business? Don't quit. Don't give up. Pray for the source and address the need and address the areas of criticism to grow stronger in your business. And I tell you what, we learn from a tree then that for you, consistency over the time, you're going to become strong, your needs are going to be met, your life will be changed, and you will be that influence in the life of so many other people. And so I guess a challenge is kind of a New Year's challenge. It carries along with the theme of what I mentioned yesterday about consistency. And I'm even excited for those promotions. And again, I'm marketing, so I got to throw out another commercial. I hope you realize what we laid out there for you. It's because we've been listening to the needs, and we want you to be consistent. Holding 30 shows between January through the end of June by rally, for some of you, it's just 30 shows. I'm happy to get 24 in the course of a full year. But if you break that down and say, you know what, 5 shows a month, I'm going to strive for 5 shows a month. Not only will you receive the 2 shovels necklace, not only will you have that reception with Tim and Peggy rally, not only if you do 5 shows, 3 out of those 6 months, you'll get a quarter line. If you do 5 shows out of 6, you'll get a half line. And if you start sponsoring 2, you're going to get a full line. Okay, those are all the benefits. Those are the rewards. Those are the celebrations. The real prize, the real success is you've developed consistency, and you've made your profit, and you've sponsored, and you've grown your business during that time, and you benefit from that. And then that sponsoring, just to know that you can say to a brand new jeweler that the key is we're not just lowering the price. And we talked about that. We didn't want to just lower the price and make it easier for people to sign up, because signing up doesn't do anybody any good. Getting to work is what does people good. It does them good because they make money as a new jeweler, and it does their upline good because they make 10% profit commissions. So we wanted to give them a reason to get started and be rewarded for that. So to know that they can get up to $300 cash rebate and will have started their business for $95, but what happened? Man, they did Quick Start 12. They made profit. They've earned free jewelry. They've grown a business on top of the fact that they're rewarded for that with that extra cash. So it's an incentive, yes, to get to work. It's not an incentive just to sign up. So understand and use that as you focus and build your business as well. All of this growing towards growth. But we know, again, and I recognize some of you are at a different place in your business, so you're not all going to be able to perform at the same level. That's okay. You be where you are, identify the season you're in, and adjust and make the plans for what you need to do. But again, don't even entertain that possibility of quitting in Premier, at least not while I'm on watch, because I won't call for it. You call me if you're thinking of quitting, and I will talk you out of that. Andy used to always say, you call me. Some days you call me and I'm going to quit. I might quit with you. But the idea is you need people to encourage you to focus on the right thing and keep going forward. So, Jonathan, Wanda, appreciate you guys, and so glad just to be a little encouragement today. And so I'll pass it back over to you as we get started here in 2015.